Hello. Make yourself comfortable. Tonight, there is nowhere to be and nothing to do except listen. Let your eyes close if they have not already. Tonight, you're going to a cabin by a lake. It is autumn. It is raining gently, and you have absolutely nowhere else to be. The car door closes behind you with a soft, heavy thud, and the sound disappears almost instantly into the rain. You are standing at the edge of a gravel path, and ahead of you, through a curtain of fine autumn rain, you can see the cabin, low and wooden with a sloped roof and a single light glowing gold in one of the front windows. Someone, perhaps you, a few days ago, planning this trip, left that light on for exactly this moment, for this arrival. The air smells like wet leaves and cold lake water, and the particular mineral smell that rain brings out of stone and soil. You breathe it in slowly, and you notice that your shoulders, which have been carrying some invisible weight for longer than you can quite remember, drop just slightly, just from breathing this air. You pick up your bag. It's not heavy. You didn't bring much. You didn't need to. The gravel crunches softly under your shoes as you walk toward the cabin, and the rain falls around you in that particular autumn way. Not a storm, not urgent, just a steady, patient kind of rain, the kind that seems to have all the time in the world, the kind that isn't going anywhere, the kind that will probably still be falling, just like this, long after you've fallen asleep tonight. To your left, through the trees, you can just make out the lake, grey and quiet, rippling gently under the rain, the surface dimpled with thousands of tiny circles where each raindrop lands and disappears. There is no wind to speak of, just the rain falling straight down, onto the water, onto the leaves, onto the roof of the cabin ahead of you. You reach the small wooden porch, 3 steps up. Your shoes are a little damp now, and you don't mind. The porch light is warm and yellow, and underneath it, hanging from a hook, is a single wind chime, very still, very quiet, because there is no wind tonight, only rain. You find the key exactly where you expected it to be, under the small clay pot beside the door, the one with nothing growing in it anymore, just dry soil. You pick up the key and it's cold in your hand, the way metal gets cold in autumn air, and you turn it in the lock, and the door opens with a soft creak that feels somehow exactly right, like it's supposed to creak, like a cabin like this should sound a little worn, a little lived in. Before you step inside, you pause for just a moment on the porch, your hand still resting on the door, and you look back the way you came. The gravel path is already disappearing into the grey, rain-softened light, the trees on either side of it dark and indistinct, their leaves, most of them still clinging on, a few of them not, shifting very slightly under the weight of the rain collecting on them, occasionally releasing a single, heavier drop that falls the rest of the way to the ground with a small, separate sound, distinct from the steady patter of the rain itself. A few leaves have already gathered at the base of the porch steps, red and gold and a deep, weathering brown, pressed flat and dark by the rain, beginning the slow process of becoming part of the ground again. You notice this without really thinking about it, the kind of noticing that happens on its own quietly in the back of the mind, while the rest of you is simply standing still, breathing, listening. The light from the window beside you falls across the wet porch boards in a long, warm rectangle, and you watch the rain fall through it, each drop catching the light for just an instant as it crosses that warm patch before disappearing again into the grey, Beyond it, you step inside. Let your breathing slow down just a little. There is nothing to figure out tonight, nowhere to rush to. You are simply arriving slowly at a quiet place. The cabin is small and warm in the way that small wooden rooms become warm even before you've turned on any heat, simply because the wood itself seems to hold a kind of stored warmth, a kind of memory of every fire that has ever been lit in the hearth across the room. You close the door behind you, and the rain becomes instantly quieter, muffled now, a soft patter against the roof and windows instead of the open, falling sound from outside. To your right, there's a small kitchen, a few wooden cupboards, a stove, a kettle sitting on it, waiting. Ahead of you, a sitting area, a worn armchair, slightly too big for the room, the kind of chair that has clearly absorbed years of people sitting in it for hours at a time doing nothing in particular. A low wooden table, a woven rug, soft underfoot, the colours faded just enough to look comfortable rather than new, and the fireplace, cold right now but ready, stacked with logs, kindling already arranged underneath, as though someone, you perhaps, or someone who knew you were coming, prepared it earlier today, knowing that the first thing you'd want after the drive, after the rain, after the long, quiet walk up the gravel path, would be a fire. You set your bag down by the door. You don't unpack yet. There's no rush for that. You take a few slow steps further into the room, your damp shoes leaving the faintest impression on the wooden floorboards, and you let your eyes move across the space the way they do when arriving somewhere for the first time in a while, taking inventory gently, without urgency. A row of brass hooks beside the door, one of them holding a coat that isn't yours. A small mirror near the entrance, slightly fogged with age, reflecting back a soft, dim version of the room behind you. The wooden beams crossing the ceiling overhead, low enough that you could touch them if you reached up, dark with age, smooth from years of wood smoke settling gently into the grain. There's a particular quality to the quiet in a room like this. Not silence exactly. You can still hear the rain against the windows, still hear the faint creak of the cabin settling around you, the way old wooden buildings always seem to shift and breathe very slightly, but a kind of held quiet, the kind that exists in places that have spent long stretches of time with no one in them, waiting patiently for whoever might arrive next. You walk over to the window beside the armchair, and you look out at the lake again, closer now, framed by the window, the way a photograph might be, except it's moving gently, the rain still falling in that same unhurried way, the surface of the water still rippling with thousands of small, disappearing circles. Somewhere out on the lake, very faint, you hear a loon call just once, a long, low, wavering sound that seems to belong entirely to this place, to this kind of evening, and then it's gone, swallowed up by the rain and the quiet. You decide it's time to light the fire. You kneel down in front of the hearth and you reach for the box of matches sitting on the small shelf built into the stone beside it. The box is slightly damp from the cabin's humidity, but the matches inside are dry and the first one catches easily, a small orange flame blooming at the tip. You touch it to the kindling and you watch as the flame spreads slowly, the way fire always seems to take its time at first, almost thoughtful, almost careful before it commits to burning properly. A thin curl of smoke rises, the kindling crackles, small pops and snaps, and then the larger logs begin to catch, and within a few minutes You have a proper fire. Warm orange light filling the room, flickering gently against the wooden walls, against the low ceiling, against the worn arms of the armchair. You sit back on your heels for a moment and simply watch it burn. There is something about watching a fire that asks nothing of you. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to do anything with it. You just watch the flames move, shift, lean one way and then another, consuming the wood slowly, steadily, with no urgency at all. The room is getting warmer now. You can feel it on your face, on your hands. Outside, the rain continues. Inside, the fire continues. Two steady, patient sounds, existing alongside each other, neither one in any hurry. You allow your body to feel heavier now. There is nothing to plan, nothing to remember, nothing to solve, just the fire and the rain and the quiet cabin around you. After a while, you're not sure exactly how long. Time moves differently in front of a fire. You get up slowly and you walk back over to the kitchen. The kettle is still sitting on the stove, exactly where you left it, exactly where it has probably sat for years, through countless other quiet evenings like this one. You fill it with water from the tap, and the sound of the water running is soft and clean, and you turn the stove on, and you hear the small click and hiss of the gas catching, and then the low blue flame settling underneath the kettle. While you wait for the water to heat, you open the cupboard above the counter, and you find a small collection of tea. Nothing fancy. A few tins, slightly dented at the corners, the kind of tins that have clearly been refilled many times over the years rather than replaced. You open one, and the smell that rises out of it is warm and a little spiced, something like cinnamon, and something like dried orange peel, and something else underneath that you can't quite name, but which smells, somehow, exactly like autumn evenings are supposed to smell. You spoon some into a small metal infuser, and you set it inside a mug. The mug is plain, off-white, with a thin hairline crack near the handle that has clearly been there for years, and has clearly never caused a problem. The kettle begins to murmur, low and quiet at first, then rising slowly into a soft whistle. You take it off the heat before it gets too loud. You've never liked the loud whistle. You like catching it just before, in that in-between moment when the water is exactly right, but the kettle hasn't yet worked itself up into something urgent. You pour the water slowly over the tea, and you watch the colour bloom out from the infuser, a deep amber spreading gently through the mug, and the smell rises up toward you, warm and soft, cinnamon and orange and something else, something like dried apple perhaps, or dried plum. You leave it to steep, and you lean against the counter for a moment, looking out the small kitchen window above the sink. While the tea steeps, your eyes drift to the small details of the kitchen around you. A row of glass jars on the windowsill, mismatched, each holding something different. Dried herbs in one, a few wooden spoons standing upright in another, a scattering of acorns and small pine cones in a third, gathered, presumably, by someone on some other autumn afternoon and never quite thrown away. A faded postcard, tucked into the corner of a small corkboard, the image too worn to make out clearly, the handwriting on the back facing inward, private, not meant for you to read, and you don't try to. A single dish towel hangs from the oven handle, patterned with small, faded birds, the fabric soft from years of washing. You notice the particular hush that settles over a kitchen once the kettle has gone quiet, the absence of that sound somehow making the rain outside and the fire crackling in the next room seem louder by comparison, fuller, as though they've simply expanded to fill the space the kettle left behind. The rain is still falling, steady, patient. The window glass has a thin film of condensation on the inside now from the warmth of the kettle, from the warmth of the fire across the room, and you draw one small line through it with your finger just to watch it clear, just to see the blurred grey world outside become, briefly, a little sharper. Then the line fogs over again, slowly, and the world outside goes soft and grey once more. Let your hands feel warm the way they would if they were wrapped around a mug like this one. There is nothing else you need to think about right now, just the tea steeping and the rain outside and the fire crackling gently in the next room. You carry the mug carefully back to the armchair and you sit down, and the chair receives you the way a good armchair always does, with a soft creak of old fabric and a gentle give in the cushion, as though it has been waiting all day specifically for this. You pull a folded blanket from the back of the chair, soft, slightly heavy, the kind of blanket that has clearly been washed many times and has only gotten softer for it, and you settle it over your legs. You take a sip of the tea. It's hot, but not too hot. Sweet, a little spiced, with that particular comfort that warm liquid brings on a cold, rainy evening. The kind of comfort that doesn't need to be explained or justified. It simply exists, simply happens, the moment the warmth reaches your chest. The fire has settled into a steady rhythm now, no longer the eager, crackling burn of newly lit kindling, but something slower, logs glowing orange and red at their core, occasionally shifting, occasionally collapsing inward with a soft, muffled sound, sending up a brief shower of small sparks that disappear almost as soon as they appear. You watch this for a while, the mug warm in your hands, the blanket warm over your legs, the rain steady against the windows. You notice the way the firelight moves across the room as the flames shift, a warm flicker crossing the spines of the books on the low shelf, a soft pulse of orange light briefly catching the curled edge of the photograph on the windowsill, the woven rug beneath your feet seeming to deepen and lighten in colour with each small change in the flames. None of it is dramatic. All of it is slow and small and endlessly repeating, the same gentle motion happening again and again, each time slightly different, each time essentially the same. A log shifts, and a thin curl of smoke rises and is drawn up into the chimney, and for a moment the smell of it reaches you, wood smoke, slightly sweet, slightly sharp, a smell that seems to belong only to evenings exactly like this one. There is a particular kind of stillness that settles into a body on an evening like this. Not sleepiness exactly, not yet, but something adjacent to it, a loosening, a softening, the feeling of a day finally being allowed to end properly, without anything left undone, without anything left to think about. You take another sip of tea. Outside, the rain continues to fall onto the lake, onto the roof, onto the dark trees that surround the cabin on every side. You can hear it more clearly now that the kettle has stopped and the room has gone quiet, except for the fire. A soft, layered sound, rain on the roof slightly higher and faster than rain on the ground, rain on the lake, a softer, wider sound, somehow spread out across all that flat water. You close your eyes for a moment just to listen. Let your eyelids feel heavy, the way they do at the end of a long day. There is nothing left to do tonight except be here warm and listen to the rain. After some time, you set the empty mug down on the low wooden table and you decide it's time to make something to eat. Nothing complicated, nothing that requires much thought, just something warm. You get up, slowly, the blanket sliding off your legs and onto the chair behind you, and you walk back to the small kitchen. In the cupboard beside the stove you find a few jars and tins, dried vegetables, a small bag of lentils, a jar of something that might be vegetable stock, the label slightly faded, the handwriting on it soft and looping, written by someone who clearly labelled their own jars rather than buying them pre-made. You decide on soup. It seems right somehow for an evening like this. You fill a small pot with water, you add the lentils, a spoonful of the stock, a pinch of salt from a small dish beside the stove. You find a single carrot in a drawer at the bottom of the fridge, slightly soft, but still good, and you slice it slowly, the knife making a quiet, even sound against the wooden board. Thin half-moons dropping one by one into the pot. You set the pot on the stove and you turn the heat to low and you leave it to simmer. While it cooks, you wander slowly around the small cabin, noticing things you hadn't noticed when you first walked in. A row of books on a low shelf beside the window, their spines faded from years of afternoon light. You tilt your head and read a few of the titles, though you don't pick any of them up yet, maybe later, maybe not at all. There's no obligation to read tonight. A small framed photograph on the windowsill slightly curled at the corners, showing the cabin itself, taken many years ago, judging by the faded colours and the old style of the car parked outside it. The same porch, the same single window, the same lake behind it, calm in the photograph, sunlit, a completely different mood from tonight's grey rain, and yet recognisably the same place. A woven basket beside the fireplace, filled with neatly stacked logs, and a few pine cones tucked in among them, for kindling, presumably, or simply because someone liked the way they looked sitting there. You continue your slow circle of the room. A small writing desk tucked into the far corner, mostly bare except for a single unlit candle in a brass holder, and a thin layer of dust that catches the firelight at a certain angle. A woolen throw, a different one from the blanket on your chair, folded neatly over the back of a wooden bench beneath the window, in deep autumn colours, rust, ochre, a faded forest green. Above the fireplace, a single dried wreath of branches and small red berries, slightly faded, hung there perhaps last autumn, perhaps the autumn before that, and never taken down because nobody saw a reason to. The floorboards creak very faintly beneath you as you walk, a different pitch with each step, depending on where exactly your weight falls, and you find yourself listening for it almost without meaning to, the way you might absently listen to your own footsteps in any quiet, unfamiliar place. You touch the spine of one of the books as you pass. You don't pull it from the shelf. You just let your fingers rest there for a moment, and then you keep walking, slowly, around the small room, while the soup simmers behind you, filling the cabin with a low, warm smell of vegetables and herbs. Let your thoughts move slowly now, the way they do late in the evening. There is no list to finish, no need to notice everything at once, just one small thing at a time, and then the next. The soup is ready before you've quite finished your slow circle of the room, and you ladle it into a bowl, a simple ceramic bowl, slightly uneven, clearly made by hand rather than a machine, with a small thumbprint pressed into the underside of it, where the potter once held it while it was still wet. You carry it back, to the armchair, and you sit, and you pull the blanket back over your legs, and you eat slowly. The soup is simple. Lentils, carrot, a little salt, the stock giving it a deep, warm flavour that feels like exactly what your body wanted, even though you hadn't quite known you wanted it until now. You eat slowly, without rushing, the spoon clicking softly against the side of the bowl between mouthfuls. Steam rises gently from the bowl with each spoonful, curling upward and disappearing into the warm air of the room. And you notice the particular pleasure of a meal eaten alone, slowly, with nowhere else to be, the way each mouthful can simply exist on its own, without conversation, without anything else competing for your attention. The carrot has gone soft in just the right way, holding its shape but yielding easily, and the lentils have thickened the broth into something close to a stew, hearty, in a way that suits the sound of the rain outside far better than anything lighter would have. The fire continues to burn beside you, lower now than before, the logs having settled into a deep bed of orange coals with just a few small flames still moving across the surface, lazy and unhurried. Outside the window the light has changed. It was late afternoon when you arrived, the rain grey and silver. Now it's deepening into evening, the grey turning to a soft blue-grey, the kind of light that exists for only a short while each day, neither day nor night, simply the quiet space between them. You finish the soup, and you set the bowl down on the table beside the now empty mug, and you sit back into the chair, and you let your body sink into it more fully than before. The blanket is warm, the fire is warm, your stomach is warm and full. Outside, the rain continues unchanged, untroubled by the passage of the afternoon into evening, simply continuing the way it has been continuing since you arrived, the way it will likely continue long after you've fallen asleep. You may notice your breathing has slowed further. There is nothing left to do now except rest here a while longer. The fire will keep burning, the rain will keep falling. You don't need to do anything about either of those things. At some point, you find yourself wanting a little fresh air. Not much, just a few minutes, just enough to feel the cool of the evening against your face before settling in for the rest of the night. You stand up slowly, and the blanket falls away from your legs, and you walk to the door, and you take a coat from the hook beside it. Not your coat, but one that was already hanging there, slightly too big, smelling faintly of wood smoke and something like cedar. You put it on anyway, it feels right. You open the door, and the sound of the rain becomes immediate and full again, no longer muffled by the walls, and the cool, damp air moves past you into the cabin for just a moment before you step outside and pull the door mostly closed behind you, leaving it open just a crack, so the firelight spills out in a thin gold line across the wet porch boards. You stand under the small overhang of the roof, just out of the rain, and you look out at the lake. It's nearly dark now. The blue-grey of early evening has deepened into something closer to true night, though there's still a faint band of lighter sky low on the horizon, just above the far tree line, the last trace of a sun that sets somewhere behind the clouds without ever quite showing itself today. The lake is barely visible, just a darker, flatter shape among the dark shapes of the trees, but you can hear it. The rain landing on it makes a different sound than the rain landing on the roof above you, or the gravel path below, or the leaves of the trees around the cabin. It's a softer sound, somehow, a wider sound, as though the lake absorbs each raindrop fully, without resistance, the way still water always seems to accept whatever falls into it. A single light glimmers, very faint, very far across the water. Another cabin perhaps on the opposite shore. Someone else maybe, sitting by their own fire tonight, listening to the same rain. You don't know them, you'll probably never know them, but there's something quietly comforting about that small, distant light. Proof that the world is still out there, going about its evening, while you stand here on this porch, wrapped in a coat that isn't yours, listening to rain fall on a lake you can barely see. You stand there a while longer, simply breathing, simply existing in the cool, damp air. The smell out here is fuller than it was inside. Wet bark, decaying leaves, the faint mineral coolness coming off the lake itself, and beneath all of it, very faintly, the smell of wood smoke drifting out from your own chimney, caught for a moment in the still evening air, before dispersing into the rain. Somewhere behind you, in the dark trees, you hear a small rustle, some animal settling for the night, perhaps, or simply a heavier branch finally releasing the rain it's been holding all evening. You don't turn to look. There's no need. Whatever it is belongs to this place, this night, just as much as you do right now, and it asks nothing of you. The same way the rain asks nothing of you. The same way the lake, dark and quiet ahead of you, asks nothing of you at all. Let your shoulders relax completely now. There is nothing out here that needs your attention, just the rain and the dark and the quiet shape of the lake. You can stay here a little longer, or you can go back inside. Either way, nothing changes. Everything continues exactly as it should. After a while, you feel the cold start to settle into your hands just slightly, just enough to remind you that it's autumn and the warmth of the cabin is right behind you, waiting. You turn and you push the door open again, and the warmth and the firelight greet you immediately. A soft wash of orange light and gentle heat after the cool blue dark of outside. You close the door behind you and the rain becomes muffled again, distant, a soft backdrop rather than the immediate enveloping sound it was on the porch. You take off the coat and hang it back on the hook, and you notice, as you do, how quiet the cabin feels now. Not empty, not lonely, just quiet in the particular way that small wooden rooms become quiet at night, when the fire is the only real source of light, and the rain outside seems to wrap the whole place in something soft and enclosing. You walk back to the armchair, but you don't sit down right away. Instead, you stand for a moment looking at the fire, which has burned down further now, the flames mostly gone, just a deep, steady bed of orange coals, pulsing very faintly, the way embers do, breathing almost in their own slow rhythm. You add one more log, not because the room is cold, but because you like the sound it makes when it first settles onto the coals, a soft collapse, a small shower of sparks, and then, after a moment, a new, small flame beginning to climb up one corner of it, slow and patient, the way every flame in this fireplace has been tonight. You sit back down, you pull the blanket over your legs again. Notice how heavy your body feels now, sitting in this chair. There is nothing left to do tonight except let this feeling continue. The fire will keep your room warm, the rain will keep falling outside. Both of these things will continue quietly, whether you're aware of them or not. Time passes, slow and formless, the way it does by a fire on a rainy night. You're not sure how long you sit there, watching the new log catch fully, watching the flames settle into their steady rhythm again, long enough that your eyes have started to feel heavy, long enough that the tea and the soup and the warmth of the room have all settled into you fully now, turning you slow and soft and ready for sleep, even though sleep is still a little while away. Eventually, you decide it's time to get ready for bed. You stand up slowly, the blanket sliding off your legs onto the chair, and you walk toward the small bedroom at the back of the cabin. The door is slightly ajar, and you push it open the rest of the way. The room is simple, a bed, low and wide, made up with thick white sheets and a heavy quilt. The kind of quilt that looks like it would be too warm in summer and exactly right in autumn. A small bedside table with a lamp, unlit. A single window, the curtains already drawn, though you can still hear the rain clearly against the glass behind them. You find a switch on the wall, and a soft, warm light fills the room, much dimmer than the lamp in the front room, gentle enough that it doesn't feel like waking up, even though you're turning it on. The room smells faintly of cedar and of clean linen, and beneath that, very faintly, the same wood smoke that has settled into every corner of the cabin tonight. A small rug lies beside the bed, soft underfoot, and a single framed print hangs on the wall opposite the window, a simple line drawing of pine trees. Unremarkable, the kind of thing that has probably hung there for years without anyone really looking at it closely, and you don't look at it closely now either. There's no need. You don't bother changing into anything special. There's a soft shirt folded on the end of the bed, left there, perhaps, by whoever prepared the cabin for your arrival, or perhaps simply something you packed yourself and have already forgotten packing. Either way, it feels right, and you change into it slowly, your movements unhurried, your mind already drifting somewhere quiet and unfocused. You walk to the small bathroom across the hall. You wash your face with water that's slightly cool, and it feels good against your skin, clarifying in a soft way rather than a sharp one. You brush your teeth slowly, looking at nothing in particular, listening to the rain, which sounds slightly different in here, slightly closer, coming through a small frosted window above the sink. When you're done, you turn off the bathroom light and walk back to the bedroom, and you pause at the doorway for a moment, looking at the bed, soft and waiting, lit gently by the bedside lamp. Let your eyelids feel even heavier now. There is nothing left to do tonight but lie down. The rain will still be there in the morning. The lake will still be there. None of it needs you to stay awake for it. You walk over to the window and pull back the curtain just slightly, just to look out one more time before sleep. The rain is still falling, steady, the same patient rhythm it's held all evening. Through the dark glass, you can just make out the shapes of trees swaying very gently, though there's barely any wind, just a faint movement, perhaps from the rain itself, perhaps from something deeper in the forest, settling for the night, the same way you are. You watch for a moment longer. Somewhere out past the trees, you know the lake is still there, dark and wide and rippling under the rain, though you can't see it from this window, not in this darkness. You don't need to see it to know it's there, steady and patient, exactly as it's been all evening, exactly as it will be tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, long after you've left this cabin and gone back to wherever it is you came from. You let the curtain fall back into place, and you turn toward the bed, and you pull back the heavy quilt, and you climb in. The sheets are cool at first, the way sheets always are, and then they warm quickly around you. the way sheets always do once your body settles into them. You reach over and turn off the bedside lamp, and the room goes dark, except for a very faint, warm line of light coming from underneath the door, where the last of the fire in the front room is still glowing quietly in the hearth. You lie there for a moment in the dark, listening. The rain, steady, unhurried, exactly the same as it's been all evening, exactly the same as it will probably be for hours still, long after you've fallen asleep. Somewhere in the distance, very faint, you hear the loon again, just once. That same long, low, wavering call, drifting across the dark water and then fading into the rain and the night. Let your whole body feel heavy now, sinking into the bed. There is nothing left to think about tonight. Just the rain and the dark and the soft, steady sound of your own breathing, slowing, 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 further still. You lie there for a while, eyes closed, listening to the rain, and somewhere in that listening, your mind drifts loose from the room around you, and the way it does sometimes late at night, when the body is still but the mind hasn't quite stopped moving yet. You find yourself remembering another rainy evening from some other autumn, though you couldn't say exactly when. A kitchen, somewhere. Much smaller than this one, the windows steamed up from something cooking on the stove. Someone else's hands moving calmly, stirring something in a pot. The rain outside that window falling in much the same way it's falling now, steady, unhurried, with all the patience in the world. You don't remember the conversation, if there even was one. You remember the warmth of the room. You remember a chair pulled close to a radiator, your sock feet pressed against the warm metal grill, the particular comfort of being warm while something cold and grey happened just outside the glass. You remember a sound, a clock maybe, or rain on a different kind of roof, tin perhaps, sharper and more percussive than the soft patter on the cabin roof tonight, ticking along steadily in the background of that other room, that other evening, wherever and whenever it was. The memory doesn't need to resolve into anything more specific than that. It doesn't need names or dates or a clear beginning and end. It simply exists, soft and warm at the edges, the way old memories of ordinary comfort tend to settle in the mind, not as a story, but as a feeling. A particular quality of warmth, a particular quality of safety, the sense of being somewhere small and dry while rain fell steadily outside, with nothing expected of you except to sit there and be warm and let the evening pass. Let this memory, or whatever it is, drift gently through your mind. There is nothing you need to remember correctly, nothing you need to hold on to. It can simply pass through soft and warm the way it's passing through now. You think vaguely of other evenings like this one, not specific evenings, not really, just a general sense of them, layered one on top of another over the years, rain against glass, a warm room, something simmering somewhere nearby, the particular, specific comfort of being inside while weather happens outside, a comfort that seems to live somewhere very old in the body, older than memory itself, the kind of comfort that doesn't need explaining because it has always simply been true. You think of the fire, still glowing faintly in the front room of this cabin, slowly turning to ash and warm grey embers, the way fires always do, eventually, no matter how carefully they're built or how long they're tended. You think of the lake outside, dark and wide, still receiving the rain the way it's been receiving it all evening, each drop disappearing into it without a trace, the surface closing calmly over each small disturbance, almost as soon as it happens. You think of the loon somewhere out there in the dark, perhaps asleep itself by now, floating quietly on water it knows better than any place you've ever known. None of these thoughts arrive with any urgency. They simply rise briefly and then sink back down again, the way the lake itself seems to absorb everything that falls into it, gently, without resistance, without keeping any of it for long. Your breathing has slowed even further now. There is nothing left to remember, nothing left to imagine, just the rain, the dark, and the soft, warm weight of your own body sinking further into the bed with every breath. Your breathing has slowed now, settling into a rhythm that matches, almost exactly, the steady fall of rain against the window. You are not thinking about anything in particular. Thoughts drift past, loose and unconnected, the way they do in the last stretch before sleep. A fragment of the lake, grey and rippling, a fragment of the fire, orange and slow, a fragment of the soup, warm in the bowl, none of them asking anything of you, none of them needing to be followed or finished. You let them drift. The rain continues outside, the same steady patter it has held all evening, all night, the same patient rhythm that doesn't change whether you're awake to hear it or not. Somewhere beneath that sound, very faint, you might still hear the fire in the front room settling further into its bed of coals, the wood inside it slowly giving up the last of its heat, the last of its light, glowing dimmer now, a deep, quiet orange, the kind of glow that asks for nothing and offers everything simply by continuing to exist in the dark. Your body feels heavy in the bed, heavier than it has all day. The quilt is warm around you. The sheets have long since stopped feeling cool. Everything around you, the whole small wooden room, the whole small wooden cabin, has settled into a single, steady temperature. The temperature of a place that has been quietly warming itself, slowly, patiently, for hours. Outside, the rain falls onto the roof. It falls onto the lake. It falls onto the dark trees and the gravel path and the porch where the wind chime still hangs, motionless, waiting for a wind that hasn't come tonight and probably won't. It falls evenly, steadily, the way it has been falling since before you arrived, the way it will likely keep falling long after the sun comes up tomorrow, soft and grey, into a morning you don't need to think about yet. Let yourself sink further into the bed. There is nothing left to notice, nothing left to track, just the rain distant and even, and the dark, soft and complete, and the slow, heavy feeling of your own body finally, fully, letting go. Somewhere far off the loon calls once more, softer this time, further away, as though it too is settling in for the night, somewhere out on that wide, dark, rain-dappled water. You don't open your eyes to listen for it again. You don't need to. The rain is still there, the lake is still there, the cabin is still warm around you, the fire still glowing faintly in the other room, the quilt still heavy and warm across your shoulders. Nothing here requires your attention any longer. Your thoughts have grown very slow now, very soft, almost shapeless. A grey lake, a gold light in a window, a wooden spoon against a ceramic bowl, a fire settling into coals, a coat that wasn't yours smelling of wood smoke, a single distant light across dark water, a row of faded books never opened tonight, a dried wreath of berries above the mantel hanging there for years, A line drawn through condensation on a window fogging over again moments later. None of these need to be held onto. They can simply pass, one after another, slow and unconnected, the way clouds pass across a sky you're not really watching anymore. The rain continues. It is the last sound you're really aware of now, soft, steady, endless, filling the dark room, filling the space between one breath and the next. It doesn't need anything from you. It will simply continue all night, falling gently on the roof, the lake, the trees, the gravel path, the quiet porch, the whole quiet world outside this small, warm cabin, while you, inside it, finally, completely, let go. Sleep well. There is nowhere else you need to be tonight. Just here, just this, just the rain and the dark and the slow, warm weight of finally, fully resting.